this is Harriet Grayson, your host and the producer of Community Culture Showcase. And we have a wonderful show for us today, something really kind of interesting and I would say unique. But I also want to let our audience know about some wonderful things that are happening here at the studio. Coming up in December, December 10th, we're going to have our art show. Once again, we had our initial art show in September. We want to have something for the holidays. We're inviting the whole public to come on here. We have some beautiful, beautiful pictures hanging in our studio from local artists, and we'd like you to come in on December 10th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. here at the studio in Groton to look around, peruse, and hopefully buy some paintings. Again, this is all local artists, and we want to support them. Remember, my name, my show is Community Culture Showcase, so we're always interested in the arts, in music, and in writing. So I want to give a little plug for myself. I write under a pen name, Anastasia Goodman, mystery novels, and I'm going to have a book signing at Congregation Bethel this coming Sunday, November 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. So come on and meet the author and learn about Sasha Perloff, the great New York City police detective. So with that introductions, I wanted to now swing into our guests. We have a wonderful group here, very unusual in the sense that these are harps. And I think of harps, I think of actually the Psalms from the Bible, from Greek and Roman writings. And here's our modern version. So with I say here, hello, Susan.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about maybe about the harps themselves.
Well, Harriet, I would like to have you see these 5 people. We're not just one today.
Right.
We have been together in the cellar building these harps for up to 28 years.
Wow.
We've designed them ourselves and built them, and I'm Susan Graham, and I'll go on to our next player.
I should say that the name of the group, I guess taken from the fact that you were in the cellar,
yes,
is the Cellar Gang. Great name. So please, Annie, tell us some more.
All right, Harriet. We started gathering, this group started together, most of us about 8 years ago, building the harps and the bowed psalteries that you see here. And we've only been playing music together for about 3 years since Frank died, Frank Murphy, whose cellar we built the instruments in. And we decided we needed to continue meeting once a week and to learn to play the instruments and also perform together. Our first performance was actually at Frank Murphy's funeral. So that's how this started. I'm Annie Payne, and I was a former musician and singer. I wanted to build a harp, having met Susan Graham a long time ago, and learn to play one. So I joined the Cellar group building the harps.
I'm Edie Warren, and I'm a very latecomer to the group. I've only been with them for the last 3 years. And I play the bowed psaltery, and it is a joy that I've been let into the group, the gang.
I am Julie Maish. I've been a member of the group for quite a while. In fact, I've even nicknamed it the Harp Salon. I've enjoyed very much making a harp, but also making a psaltery, a very interesting musical instrument. Quite different, but very nice.
I'm Virginia Wooten, and I've been part of the group a little bit less than 8 years, but I enjoyed listening to the music. Music speaks to my little soul, and so now that I learned to make an instrument, we had to learn to play them.
And so now what we're going to hear is a piece.
Scarborough Fair, a traditional English ballad. Banter between 2 ex-lovers, each requesting impossible tasks from the other person, and in order to be reunited.
D, tag, 1, 2.
Very nice, very nice. Now, there's many pieces you could play. Why that one?
It's an ancient folk song, and we love it. And Simon and Garfunkel reintroduced it after probably lying fallow for 300 years.
Right.
It's a lovely piece.
Absolutely.
And it's in Dorian mode. We play modally, not in different keys, but different modes. So, Southwind.
Southwind is a traditional Irish waltz based on the Song of the Irish Whistle by Thomas O'Cairn and Elon Piper. The song was written in the 1700s by Freckled Donald McNamara.
C. 1, 2.
I would assume, many pieces to pick from. Is there one person who is the leader of the gang, so to speak, in terms of this orchestral group?
I think we're very democratic.
Like a chamber piece.
I ask, what new tune would you like to play? And all of us have come in with tunes to play.
See. Now, that was Irish, so I associate this kind of music with Ireland and Scotland and to some degree England. But I'm sure it's much more international than even that in terms of, the idea of when the people came from Ireland and Scotland to the United States, they brought things like the fiddle to kind of emulate the kind of sounds that they heard. That was something easy to obviously travel. Appalachia became a center for that kind of music. So I'm curious, were you a musician before you did this? Is that your experience? You started out playing something else and decided this is something I'd like to do?
Virginia, how about you?
I played piano, quit it 4 times.
Okay.
Took up harp late in life, and then I met Susan through a harp association locally, and then from there I progressed to this. I just figure I'm growing.
Yeah. You can keep on learning. Is that the whole idea?
And there's so much music to be learned through at least 2,500 years
of this kind of
experience.
music.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think much music is now coming forward again with all these early music ensembles that have been extant for 15, 20 years.
And what do you attribute to that interest? Is it the simplicity of it? Is it the fact that you say that it's like more a chamber group than an orchestral kind of thing with the dictator as the conductor? I mean, is there a reason why this and not something else? I mean,
I think good music goes through the centuries. That's why we're picking up on tunes that are 300 to even 500 years old, which is our next tune. I think this one.
Yes.
Who introduces this?
I do. So the next tune is Cape Breton Dance, which is a Highland Scottish music. It represents the dance music of the Highland immigrants who came to Cape Breton Island in Canada.
And it's in mixolydian mode.
Okay.
It means G to G on all white notes for anyone who's listening. G, 1, 2.
To America, actually to Canada, did they bring instruments that look like what's in front of us with them? Is that what they were playing?
They couldn't afford to bring their instruments, and I think that's why there was a lot of singing, and the dulcimer was created in these this North American continent. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is an American-made instrument, and I think that because the people coming from Europe and from the British Isles couldn't afford to bring their guitars, even though they are only 6 strings. Right. They were just too expensive, and they're to cart over the ocean, and they wouldn't have had room for them. So they sang in harmony. The sacred harp singing has nothing to do with harps or sacred, but it is actually sacred music. Was 4-part harmony that was invented amongst people who couldn't afford to bring instruments. But the dulcimer and the banjo, I think, are both American instruments. Someone might correct me on that.
Okay. And of course, those are the places where today, when you think about mountain music and the influence of the Scots and the Irish, less extent the English who came to this country, that's the kind of music that they started to play, which in fact then spread around the country. And every now and then I find that somehow there's a musical revival of something. So it's interesting that you talk about the early music. I think that all of a sudden the harpsichord, you're starting to see more music that's being played for the harpsichord, which predates the piano for some of the people who perhaps don't know exactly what we're talking about here. But I don't credit myself as being a good musician. I was a musician at one time, so I have some information, dangerous. But so I have a great admiration for people who decide, I'm just going to pick up an instrument and
try it.
And this one I think is quite different than, say, sitting down and playing the piano, or I play the clarinet, opening it up and playing. So I think of this as kind of like a revision, or like we want to go back to something maybe a little bit simpler. And this, to me, although these are clunky kinds of instruments, It's not something that you're going to carry on your back.
Yeah, a flute is much easier to
That's
carry
right,
than
or a clarinet.
anything here.
You stick it in there and it works. So that's really fine. So
they do have small harps that they carried around, and instrument builders did come to Canada and the United States. And
from Europe.
From Europe.
Okay.
And built new.
And did they look
instruments
at 300-400 years ago? Did they look like the ones that you're playing today?
They looked more like this one back here. The
Okay.
one, which doesn't show right now, but maybe we can pull it out.
Sure.
later.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, they were short and they were strapped to the person's back. And
Literally
the harper
so.
literally
Okay.
went slogging through mud and all kinds of conditions to go from one castle to another
Mm-hmm.
to play music that
Right.
he often made up as he went along so that he could have a new song for his patron at the next place and
Right.
get paid.
Interesting. Yes.
And those were blind harpers. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
We're going to start again with music, Ashokan.
Ashokan Farewell is a modern American waltz that was written by J. Unger, and it was in the style of a Scottish lament, and it was played for the Civil War film series.
The Burns series.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And that's the one that you hear for all of theirs. And the Ashokan Catskill region is now mostly covered by a reservoir.
So, but the music lives.
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
It does.
G, 1, 2.
Very lovely. So this is actually a modern piece.
It is.
It
Yes.
was first created about 25 years ago. I know they're having the 25th anniversary
Right.
of the Civil War series on PBS.
Right. Yeah.
So somebody, a modern writer, a modern musician, came forward with this piece.
That's
It has a very melancholy sense to it.
It's
Just
a wonderfully
like-
written tune.
Just like you have that sense of the American Civil War being such a, brutal times.
Mm.
And it's kind of reflected in that. I also think that certain amount of string instruments have that tendency to make you feel not like a cello to my mind, and maybe Mendelssohn, you have that real melancholy kind of sound of string. So I attribute lots of not fast kind of fiddle music, but a lot of heavier kinds of stuff in terms of the expressiveness of having kind of a string instrument like this.
We try not to be too depressing.
Oh.
We do play some faster, but yeah, I agree with what you're
And
saying.
a cello is a good one to play that piece. Viola and a cello would sound wonderful with that piece. But we have separate strings, so we can't squeeze the tune the way a cellist and a violinist could. So these are ancient instruments. And
Yes.
the cello is much what? It's only 300 or 500 years old. I
Yes,
think that's
probably
when
something like that,
Stradivarius did.
yes.
So we'll move on.
My
to
Little Welsh Home, a Welsh lament collected by Gwyn Williams for the Welsh Folk Society. Originally from a traditional lament.
A. 1, 2.
Beautiful. And
It's an unusual tune.
well, I
And
see
wish
you
it were
two
longer, but that's why they play it three times.
Two-fisted.
Well, that's just because we need more bass. We have one of our members missing, so.
Oh, okay. So that ordinarily would not be played?
No,
Oh.
just if you have two hands, you might as well use them.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was incredible. You call it a lament. Is that descriptive of a certain style of music?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
And one was Irish, one was Welsh. Is there something characteristic about the differences between them?
No, it's the music style. The different countries, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, they play different types of music they're kind of along the same lines because they're all Celtic areas.
They borrow from each other all the time.
Yeah, but there are differences between the
small
styles,
ones.
like the Highland dance style versus which would be a livelier style. But Highland music, outside of the lowland music, there's different regions in the United States.
Okay.
You would have different music styles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wild Mountain Thyme is a Scottish air. It is based on the 1700s poem The Braes of Bowder by Robert Tannahill and was set to traditional music.
C, tag, 1, 2.
That's quite lovely. If people are interested in hearing this kind of music, are there famous groups out there where they can pick up some recordings? Is it something?
There's a lot of music that comes out under the Celtic music title,
Okay.
you know, in different compilations collected from one of I have some old favorites. One of them is Silly Wizard from Scotland. Another one is Steel Eye Span. They take traditional music though and kind of ramp it up. And that's also, we're going to be doing a little more eclectic music thrown in here and there as we progress into it. So we draw from, a lot of different places. Susan, what is the, harpist name? That plays a lot of the traditional.
Many of them. I can't think of one
it's
right
off
now.
the top of my head.
Patrick Ball?
Patrick Ball, yeah.
Okay. He does play a wire harp. He plays it on his right shoulder.
He does. He's a harp builder.
He is a harp maker.
Yeah.
And he has a wonderful repertoire.
Yeah.
So, I think our next piece.
Greensleeves, a traditional English folk song and broadside ballad. Originally, Ye Lady Greensleeves of Elizabethan origin was listed in the London Stationers' Company. It was transposed in 1865 and used as the Christmas carol, What Child Is This?
3 times. D. 1, 2.
Certainly a popular and relatively well-known
And I did
style.
forget to say, Harriet, that I'm playing a counter melody, and so are 2 others. And that last time through, there's a composed counter melody written maybe 15 years ago in a church hymnal. And I thought, oh, it's very nice. And so some of us have learned it already.
Okay,
and that's why it sounded more orchestral in the last verse.
Now, it's kind of interesting. You bow with these, but you don't use a bow with the harp.
No, you could only bow this string and this string.
Okay,
I think
because
it wouldn't
you don't
fit.
have enough, right? Not
So,
enough. Interesting.
Bowed strings last longer. These are
Okay.
plucked. Actually, this is percussion in the orchestra. This is a percussion instrument. It's not a string, though it has 46 strings to tune.
Right. Oh,
So
yes,
only the
yeah.
violin family, the string is a string family.
Okay.
Strings through the bass.
And of course, you did say they were made out of metal, right?
These harps are all strung in metal, and so are the psalteries. So
Mhm.
they're
And that's tough on your fingers. Got to get some
Yes.
nice calluses built up, right,
Yes,
over
you do.
time.
And if you don't play, you bleed.
Yes, exactly right. And the reason why it's metal versus nylon or animal hair?
I think that gut strings weren't really available.
Okay.
They didn't figure out that cats or sheep had intestines that you could twist into string until sometime in 1400. And yet the Egyptians were drawing wire through dyes back in the times of the tombs.
Mhm.
So it's been 2,000 or 3,000 years. You can draw metal through a dye and then create a thin wire. All of that jewelry that's in those tombs
Right.
was gold and silver drawn
Yes.
through a dye.
Mhm.
And so they used it to string instruments
Right.
until something. I don't know how soon other nations discovered gut, but we use cat gut and sheep gut for normal harps
Right.
nowadays. But these are all wire strung.
These are the
Uh-huh.
more ancient.
More, yes. Okay. Very good.
So let's see with the next one.
With our next song, we return to another Irish lament. It's called The Last Rose of Summer, and it was written in 1813, an old Irish song, based on the poem The Young Man's Dream. It was set to music by Sir John Stevenson, and the poem was written by the Irish poet Thomas Moore.
C.
Very lovely. Very
Well-loved tune. Very well-loved tune. And we're going to go back to also, please.
Searching for Lambs, and written up in 100 English folk songs collected by Cecil Sharp.
E. 3 times. 1, 2. beautiful, and yet it's so short.
Right.
That was 1,300.
Interesting. It's, I see the way the instrument is actually created like this. Is you learn by kind of touching or watching somebody else? Because you're thinking 1300s, nobody could read or write. Maybe a few church people. So it's that I would watch you play, and then you would hear, so you had to have a good ear, right? And then I would try to just reproduce the sound.
Yes.
Is that basically how?
Yes. Most people did learn music for centuries just by watching another person who had figured out how to do it and maybe had the skill for it.
No YouTube
natural.
or anything to go watch how to do it.
No, lessons weren't really given until probably Mozart's time. I'm probably wrong on that, but many people around the world learn music just from listening.
Right.
Yeah. It's the best way, really.
Of course.
You don't get wound up on how to exactly interpret it. The freer it is, the better.
There we go.
That's what folk music is. Okay.
We traveled to another country, Austria. The next song is Edelweiss, written in 1959 for the musical Sound of Music. It is based on the Edelweiss is a white flower that grows in the high Alps, and many anti-Nazi Austrian patriots wore this flower as a sign of their standing.
B.
Lovely. Now that was not written in 1959 for instruments like this.
No.
So did you then learn how to, did one of you actually arrange it to be played?
No. What we do is listen to the tune and just write down the tune. And then we work out harmonies to go with it. I think that's what most people would do if you can't find a written sheet. Well,
okay, so you
do
make
it right out
own,
of your head.
Okay, you make your own arrangements.
And you can sing these tunes and figure out the notes on a piano pretty easily.
We also have to transpose because we don't have levers to sharp or flat notes. So sometimes we have to change the mode that we're playing in to
adapt to these
that.
kinds of instruments.
Right.
Yeah. So.
By the Sally Gardens. A poem by William Yeats was sung to an old tune, The Morelos Shore. The name Sally came from the old word sallow, an Irish willow. These trees were cultivated for roof thatching material near the river Sligo.
C. 1, 2.
announced it, all the stuff that you're playing, most of it comes from the British Isles. And
Yes.
yet, is this not something, this kind of tradition was in the rest of Europe, in Southern Europe or Eastern Europe? They didn't adapt this kind of music. Certainly, immigrants who came to this country came from all over Europe, and yet I don't associate this kind of music with the Italians, for example, or even Eastern Europeans. I mean,
We're going to expand our repertoire.
Oh.
I have in mind we did an Austrian tune.
Right.
Or at least it was, meant to be from Austria. I have Italian tunes and, French and German in mind. They just don't know it yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's for next January.
Okay. All right.
Because, we're trying to stick with tunes at first that probably they know that they don't know that they know. They've been hearing them all their lives over here.
Okay.
So we'll hear even more.
Okay.
Also, the other places in the world played in different modes than what we play in, but also different style of music completely that they play with their own traditional instruments. So transposing a lot of that to harp would be a little tricky. Not that some of it might not be done, but yeah.
And I'm going to say I need to tune this string. This is the treachery of this instrument. The D string is deciding there.
Okay.
Because I've been avoiding it, and now I'm going to play it.
You take that moment.
Yes.
Just like guitar players and all
It was a note
string.
missing. They were filling in for my D string every time. They didn't know it yet, though.
The Parting Glass is a traditional Scottish air, and the song was listed in the 1605 book of the Skene manuscript. It is attributed to Sir Alex Boswell and was sung at funeral and farewell gatherings until Old Lang Syne replaced it in popularity.
So you can tell this is the Parting Glass, and we will be finishing with this piece.
Ah, okay.
Okay. E, 1, 2.
So this is one observation, of course, is that for some of you, it's clear that you don't have to be young to learn to play an instrument. I mean, and so it's like, what would make
3
you
years
kind
ago,
of,
we were all 21.
I mean, did you wake up one day and say, yeah, gee, this is something I want to do? I mean, you said, for example, that you had played the piano before.
I know, but I went to the harp because
We
I
need to-
decided I had 3 more moves in my life. And I was not going to the piano.
You want to use your
It's
microphone?
too big. So I like harp music, so I went that Saturday morning to the nearest harp place, they set me up with a harp and a teacher.
Well, we
To repeat.
no. So that's basically you just sort of thought that this would be kind of a fun thing to do.
Absolutely.
And the did you actually make that instrument that you're playing?
Yes, I did.
So first you guys made the instruments,
Yes.
and then you decided you better learn how to play it because you wanted
Because
to.
I forced them to.
Okay.
No, she did not.
No.
Well, good.
So how did you even find out about this the Cellar gang?
I was invited to a Christmas concert at Frank's home, at Julie's home. And of course I got lost. And I arrived later than anyone, but it was a magical night that night. The music just flowed. People do this, do that. Oboes, drums, everything was being played that night. And then Susan asked if I'd like to come to Frank's Cellar. Then I found out why.
That was a kind of
Recruiting.
funny introduction. Let me take you to my cellar.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I knew her before that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So you have long been interested in this, Susan? I mean, this is something that...
No. I was an orchestral harpist.
Okay.
So I had really the creme de la creme to play.
Yes.
Frank introduced himself to me at Mystic Seaport, and he wanted me to build harps.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't think I need to build harps. He said, well, I do. So I had a small one at home, and he copied that harp. It was one about the size of Annie's harp.
Yes.
And within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, he had measured it up and cut up pieces of wood and copied that harp, and it sounded better than mine.
Oh.
And he said, wouldn't you like to come and build them? And I said, well, I don't have the skills yet. He said, you don't know that you have them, but you have them. So I went to his house and we drew up that harp, the tallest one,
Right.
on his kitchen table.
Right.
And I was astonished that you could just draw a line and then cut out wood to it and make a harp. He was a clever fellow.
Obviously,
So
obviously.
I did the harp string spacing, and I knew approximately
Because you had played the harp professionally,
I had played before.
right? Okay.
But really, we invented as we went along. We didn't have any patterns for any of these except looking at cards, paintings from 14 and 1500. Memling and Bosch were quite frequently painting angels with harps, but their robes covered a lot of the harp, so we had to use our imagination. And I wanted round backs compared to Annie's square back.
I see.
Because it hit you right in the collarbone.
Okay.
So he didn't like making round backs, but we made many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this was actually the neck got dropped, so
Yes.
I decided instead of gluing things on, it had to be improvised. So I made a metal piece of a thistle to make it look like a bird on a branch.
Accidents happen in the cellar. And we just make the accident work for us rather than against us.
That's
But
interesting.
He was a very clever fellow.
So there's I asked you this before we came on camera, there's no standard that says it has to be this or that outside of a professional
Not
harp.
us anyway.
Yes. No, but in general, when people play, there is no, when you look at a banjo, you only see certain thing that looks like a banjo. But here, I'm looking at least in my own sight, a lot of variety in terms of what these things look like.
Yes, and even the part that you don't notice, the string spacing, many pedal harpists wouldn't want to try this because the spacing is very different from what they're accustomed to. But we try anything.
Okay.
This harp has much narrower string spacing.
Okay.
You can even see that the strings are closer together. And so immediately you just adjust. You do it.
Right. You'd have to play this differently because of the spacing, yeah?
A little, but you put your hands on a harp on an octave, and your brain does the rest. It knows proportionately where to go.
Eventually.
It's amazing. But you can play on differently spaced instruments and even oddly spaced instruments. In the pedal harp world, there is a Salvi harp that's designed with more space in the middle of the concert harp strings because of busyness in Strauss and other composers, and they're closer together in the bass and treble. But you get used to it.
I see.
So there are standards in harp stringing, but we sort of blew them all and just do it.
And you're using what kind of wood?
This is cherry. This is cherry, I believe. This is probably
That's cherry as well.
Is this a cherry? Okay, I wasn't sure about that.
We did walnut as well.
This is the curly. I've got tiger maple for the sound box with the cherry on the top, and then our plywood soundboards.
We did bird's eye maple, tiger maple, cherry, walnut, and one other. We did a bird's eye maple. The walnut was hard to work. It's it's hard on the tools too. It's more resistant. There's a lot of oil in walnut wood.
This is fascinating. So we do know that you guys have been together for a few years. I want to tell the audience again to remind them about your upcoming performances coming up this month as well as next month. So this month we have upcoming show at the Groton Senior Center on November 24th, and that as the Jabez Smith House, also in Groton, on December 13th. So these are all free and open to the public.
Yes, they are.
So I encourage you to see this group live.
They'll be playing different music.
Different music, so it won't be the same music. That is absolutely wonderful. So I want to applaud you for coming. Again, this is what I think is a wonderful message for people is you don't have to be 15 years old to play an instrument. You're never too old to learn to do something. What I think is rather extraordinary, to make an instrument and then go ahead and learn how to play it is not something that people would ordinarily say, oh yeah, let me try to do this. So I think that it's a great accomplishment that you have, both as makers, users of your fingers and hands, and then of course as musicians. So I want to thank my guests again. And do you have a website out there or something where people can kind of look up and find you?
They can look up the Cellar Gang on Facebook
and
get to that's the website we have right now. This is all new. We've newly created that.
That's great. You know, now that you show people that you don't have to be 12 to learn how to play an instrument.
To do something new.
Right. Then I guess you got to join Facebook and be like, as if you were 12 years old. So I want to thank my guests for coming and do catch up on them and their other performances. And again, I want to remind our audience, right here in the studio, SEC TV, we are the Art Gallery of Groton, Connecticut. There isn't any other like us. So we want to invite people to come on in. We have some beautiful artwork for sale from local artists. We want to kind of take up the slack. We're having a kind of holiday party art show. We invite the public to come on in to see the art that we have. Again, it's going to be on December 10th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. right here at the studio in Groton between Benny's and the post office here in Groton. So come on in. Plenty of parking. Probably have a little wine and cheese, but mostly we want to encourage you to come and look and see what young artists and old artists are doing here in our community, and to become part of our SEC TV community. Again, this is Harriet Grayson, and if you have a chance, on December 8th, this coming Sunday, if you want to meet me, the author, Anastasia Goodman, and my Sasha Perloff Mystery Series, come by Congregation Bethel in New London, and I'd be happy to sign books and talk about my characters. So, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. We've had a kind of a really interesting group today. This is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer of Community Culture Showcase. Come visit and see us next time.